It was a Tuesday evening when the first crack appeared in the foundation of my life. I was sprawled on the couch, the TV flickering with some mindless sitcom, but my eyes kept drifting to the clock. 9:17 p.m. Sarah should have been home by now. She'd called earlier, her voice clipped and distant, saying she had to stay late at the office again. Third time this week. I wanted to believe her. I'd spent 8 years believing her, loving her, building a life with her in this cozy suburban house with its white picket fence and rose bushes she'd planted herself. But when she finally walked through the door that night, her hair damp from the rain and a faint whiff of unfamiliar cologne trailing behind her, something shifted inside me. "Busy day?" I asked, forcing a smile. "Yeah, you know how it is," she mumbled, avoiding my gaze as she hurried to the shower. I stood there, the knot in my stomach tightening, telling me this wasn't just my imagination. The living room smelled faintly of her new perfume. Jasmine, sharp and secretive. Nothing like the soft lavender she used to wear when we'd curl up here together. The couch beneath me, once a haven for our movie nights, felt stiff and unwelcoming, its cushions sagging under the weight of unspoken questions. I glanced around the room, taking in the familiar details that now seemed foreign. The coffee table cluttered with her design magazines, the bookshelf stuffed with her romance novels and my car manuals, the framed photo of us at Niagara Falls, grinning like the world was ours. That photo mocked me now, a relic of a time when I didn't question her every move. The signs had been piling up for months, little things I tried to ignore. Her phone, once left carelessly on the kitchen counter, was now glued to her side, buzzing with messages she'd silence with a quick, guilty glance my way. One night as we sat watching a movie, some rom-com she'd picked, I saw her screen light up, and she snatched it up so fast I barely caught the flush creeping up her cheeks. "Who was that?" I'd asked, keeping my tone light, casual, like it didn't matter. "Just a work thing," she'd said, too quickly, her eyes darting to the TV instead of meeting mine. I'd nodded, letting it go, but the doubt lingered, festering like a splinter under my skin. Then there was the weekend she claimed she had a last-minute work conference. Odd, since her calendar was blank when I peeked at it later, hidden under a stack of bills on her desk. I even called her office one afternoon, pretending to be a client needing an urgent design quote, and the receptionist confirmed she was out of town. It all lined up, yet it didn't. My gut screamed that something was wrong, but my heart clung to the Sarah I'd married. The woman who'd laughed with me over burnt pancakes on lazy Sundays, who'd held my hand through every storm, who'd promised me forever under a starry sky 8 years ago. Nights became sleepless battles between trust and doubt. I'd lie beside her in our queen-sized bed, her soft breathing filling the silence, and wonder if I was losing her. The bedroom, with its pale blue walls and the quilt her mom had sewn, used to be our sanctuary. Now it felt cold, the space between us growing wider with every passing night. We'd been through so much. Buying this house with its creaky floors and big windows, grieving her dad's death 3 years back, dreaming of kids someday when we could afford it. But lately, she'd felt like a stranger. Was it me? Had I been too caught up in my job at the auto shop, coming home greasy and tired, to notice her slipping away? Or was there someone else? The question gnawed at me until I couldn't take it anymore. I needed proof, not just for her sake, but for mine, to silence the voices in my head that wouldn't let me sleep. One evening, after she left for another late meeting, I sat alone at the kitchen table, a glass of whiskey trembling in my hand. The house was too quiet, the ticking clock on the wall mocking my indecision. Confronting her without evidence would be a gamble. She'd deny it, call me paranoid, and I'd be left questioning my sanity. I'd tried asking her once, a month ago, when she came home at midnight with lipstick smudged on her collar. "Long day," I said, my voice tight. "Yeah, client dinner ran late," she'd replied, brushing past me to the bathroom. I'd stood there, staring at the closed door, wanting to believe her but knowing deep down that something wasn't right. Now, sitting here with the whiskey burning my throat, I knew I couldn't keep living in this limbo. That's when the idea hit me, a hidden camera. It felt wrong, invasive, like I was crossing a line I couldn't uncross, but desperation outweighed my guilt. I had to know, even if the truth tore me apart. I spent hours that night hunched over my laptop, the glow of the screen casting shadows across the kitchen. I researched cameras, small, discreet ones that could blend into our home without her noticing. I scrolled through reviews, watched unboxing videos, compared prices until my eyes blurred. Finally, I settled on a wireless model with a phone app, tiny enough to hide but powerful enough to capture everything. I ordered it with next day shipping to my office so Sarah wouldn't see the package, my heart racing as I clicked, confirm. When it arrived the next afternoon, I stashed it in my toolbox under a pile of wrenches and rags, waiting for the right moment. The next day, while she was at work, I took the afternoon off and drove home, my palms sweaty against the steering wheel. The house was silent as I stepped inside, the air heavy with anticipation. My hands shook as I unboxed the camera, a sleek black device no bigger than a matchbox, its lens glinting like an unblinking eye. I chose the living room shelf, a spot where it could see everything. The couch where we'd shared so many nights, the doorway she walked through every day, the life we'd built together. I tucked it carefully between her dusty old novels, Pride and Prejudice, Wuthering Heights, and a photo frame from our honeymoon, the one where we're laughing on a beach in Florida, sand between our toes and the sun setting behind us. I adjusted the lens, testing the feed on my phone. There it was, a crystal clear view of the room, every detail sharp and unforgiving. It worked. Now I just had to wait. The next few days were torture. I'd come home from the shop, kiss her cheek, ask about her day, all while the camera watched silently from its perch. She'd smile, tell me about her latest design project, and I'd nod, pretending everything was normal. But every night, after she went to bed, I'd lock myself in the bathroom and scroll through the footage, my phone screen glowing in the dark. At first, it was nothing. Sarah cooking dinner in the kitchen, her hair tied back as she chopped vegetables. Sarah flipping through channels on the couch, a glass of wine in her hand. Sarah watering the plants by the window, humming a tune I didn't recognize. I started to hope I'd been wrong, that my fears were just shadows in my head, that she was still the woman I'd fallen for all those years ago. But on the fifth day, something changed. I sat on the toilet lid, the bathroom fan humming overhead, and watched the latest footage. She was in the living room, pacing back and forth, her phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was too low to catch through the app's mic, but I saw her smile. A soft, secret smile I hadn't seen in months, the kind she used to save for me. She paused by the window, twirling a strand of hair around her finger, then whispered, "I can't wait to see you too." My heart sank, a cold weight settling in my chest. Who was she talking to? What couldn't she wait for? I rewatched the clip 3 times, zooming in on her face, searching for clues, but all I saw was that smile. Beautiful, devastating, and not meant for me. Saturday was the breaking point. She'd said she was going shopping with friends, kissing me goodbye with a breezy, "See you later," as she grabbed her purse and headed out the door. I didn't buy it. Not after the phone call, not after the lies that kept piling up. I stayed home, phone in hand, watching the live feed like a man possessed. The house was quiet, the minutes dragging by as I stared at the empty living room on my screen. Then, at 2:13 p.m., the front door opened, and Sarah walked in, not alone. A man followed her, tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair neatly combed and his jawline sharp enough to cut glass. His face was vaguely familiar. Maybe a coworker I'd met at one of her office parties, maybe someone I'd seen in passing. They stood in the living room, laughing, her hand brushing his arm like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then she leaned up and kissed him, deep, hungry, desperate, the way she hadn't kissed me in years. My breath stopped. I watched, numb, as they sank onto the couch, her fingers tangling in his hair, his hands roaming her back, pulling her closer. The phone slipped in my sweaty grip, but I couldn't look away. They moved together like they'd done this before, like they knew each other's bodies, like they belonged there in my home, on my couch, in my life. I slammed the phone down, tears burning my eyes, my world shattering into a million jagged pieces. My chest heaved, my hands shook, and a wave of nausea hit me so hard I stumbled to the sink, gripping the edge as I fought to breathe. This was it. The proof I'd wanted, the truth I'd feared, staring me in the face with cruel clarity. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the blank screen, the image of them seared into my brain. The bathroom tiles were cold against my bare feet, the silence deafening except for the faint drip of the faucet. I kept seeing her, my Sarah, my wife, kissing him, touching him, giving him everything she'd withheld from me. 8 years of marriage, 8 years of love and fights and promises, reduced to this. When Sarah came home that evening, her arms full of shopping bags and a smile on her face, I was waiting in the dark living room, my laptop open on the coffee table. The footage paused on that damning moment. "Hey, honey," she chirped, flipping on the light, her voice bright and oblivious. "How was your day?" I looked at her, my throat tight, my voice barely a whisper. "We need to talk." Her smile faltered, her brows knitting together as she set the bags down. "What's wrong?" she asked, stepping closer, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I pointed to the laptop, my hand trembling. "I saw the footage. I know about him." Her face went white, her eyes widening as she froze mid-step. "What footage? What are you?" I hit play, and there it was. Her and that man, undeniable, in our home, their lips locked, their bodies pressed together. The sound of her gasp filled the room as she clapped her hands over her mouth, staring at the screen in horror. "Mike, she stammered, her voice breaking. But I cut her off, standing up so fast the chair scraped against the floor. "How could you?" I shouted, my voice cracking with rage and pain. 8 years, Sarah. 8 years. And you throw it away like this." She collapsed onto the couch, the same couch where I'd seen them, her shoulders shaking as sobs tore through her. "I'm so sorry, Mike. I never meant to hurt you." "Then why?" I demanded, pacing the room, my fists clenched at my sides. "Why cheat on me? Why him?" She wiped her eyes with trembling hands, her mascara streaking down her cheeks. "I was lonely," she whispered, her voice small and raw. "You've been so distant, always working late, always tired, and I felt invisible. He was there, listening, and it just happened." I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that echoed off the walls. "So it's my fault? I'm busting my ass at the shop to keep us afloat, to pay for this house, for your car, for everything, and you're screwing some guy in our living room because I'm not home enough." "No, it's not your fault," she cried, reaching for me. But I stepped back, out of her grasp. "It's mine. I messed up, Mike. I hate myself for it." "Do you love him?" I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous quiet, dreading her answer more than anything. She hesitated, her gaze falling to the floor, and that pause told me everything before she even spoke. "I don't know," she whispered finally. "I care about him, but I love you, Mike. I don't want to lose you." "You already have," I said, the words slicing through me as much as they did her, sharp and final. She broke down then, burying her face in her hands, her sobs loud and guttural. I stood there, watching her, torn between wanting to hold her and wanting to scream until my lungs gave out. We talked for hours, yelling, crying, pleading, our voices bouncing off the walls of the home we'd built together. She told me his name, Brian, a coworker from her design firm, and how it started 6 months ago, a late-night project that turned into drinks, then more. She swore it wasn't planned, that she didn't mean to fall for him, that she still wanted me, us, our life. But every word felt like a lie, every excuse a dagger twisting deeper. "I can't do this," I said finally, grabbing my keys from the counter, my voice hoarse from shouting. "I need to go." "Mike, please," she begged, standing up, her hands outstretched. "We can fix this. I'll end it with him. I'll do anything." I shook my head, backing toward the door. "It's too late, Sarah. I can't trust you anymore. I don't even know who you are." And with that, I walked out, the door slamming behind me with a finality that echoed in my bones. I got in my truck and drove, the night blurring past in a haze of headlights and rain. My mind replayed every moment of our life together. The day we met at that coffee shop, her red scarf bright against the autumn leaves. Our wedding under an oak tree, her white dress glowing in the sunlight. The nights we'd spent dreaming of a family, a future. I'd loved her with everything I had. But it wasn't enough. As I pulled into the parking lot of a cheap hotel on the edge of town, the neon sign flickering above me, I realized the truth. Our marriage had been dying long before that camera caught her. She'd betrayed me with Brian, but I'd betrayed her too, in my own way, with my absence, my silence, my neglect. Now all that was left was the wreckage, and I had to figure out how to rebuild alone. The hotel room was a stark contrast to our home. Small and impersonal, with thin walls that let in the hum of traffic outside. The bed sagged under my weight, the sheets scratchy against my skin, and the air smelled faintly of mildew. I lay there, staring at the cracked ceiling, my suitcase untouched by the door. Sleep wouldn't come, my mind too loud with memories and questions. What had I missed? When had she stopped loving me? Or had she ever really loved me at all? I thought about calling Tom, my best friend since high school, but what could he say? Tough break, man? There were no words to fix this. I was alone, truly alone, for the first time in 8 years. The next morning, I drove back to the house to pack my things. The sun was just rising, casting a pale gold light over the neighborhood, the rose bushes glistening with dew. Sarah was there, sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes red and puffy, a mug of coffee untouched in front of her. She looked up as I walked in, her face crumpling, but I couldn't meet her gaze. I grabbed a suitcase from the hall closet and started filling it. Shirts, jeans, socks, toothbrush, moving on autopilot. She watched me, silent, her breathing uneven, until I zipped up the bag and turned to leave. "Mike, can we try counseling?" she said, her voice breaking the stillness. "Please, I'll do anything to fix this." I paused, my hand on the doorknob, and looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since last night. Her hair was a mess, her face bare of makeup, her eyes pleading with a desperation I'd never seen before. Part of me wanted to say yes, to believe we could salvage something from the ashes, but the other part, the part that had watched her with Brian, knew better. "It's too late," I said quietly. "I can't trust you, Sarah, and without trust, we've got nothing." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks, and I walked out, leaving behind the life we'd built, the dreams we'd shared, the love that had once felt unbreakable. I drove to my new apartment, a small one-bedroom place across town I'd rented sight unseen, and spent the day unpacking, trying to fill the emptiness with routine. But every box I opened, every shirt I hung up, reminded me of her, of us, of what we'd lost. The weeks that followed were a blur of work and solitude. I threw myself into the shop, taking extra shifts, fixing engines until my hands ached and my mind went numb. Tom came by a few times, dragging me out for beers, but even his jokes couldn't pull me out of the hole I'd fallen into. I saw Sarah once, a month later, when I went back to the house to pick up some tools I'd forgotten. She was in the driveway, unloading groceries, and for a moment, our eyes met. She looked thinner, her smile forced, and I wondered if she was happy with Brian, if he was worth it. But I didn't ask. I just nodded, grabbed my stuff, and left. 6 months later, I sat on the balcony of my apartment, a cold beer in my hand, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The pain was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but it was fading, like a bruise healing over time. I'd started therapy a few weeks back, talking to a guy named Dr. Patel who listened without judgment and helped me untangle the mess in my head. I joined a gym too, running on the treadmill until my lungs burned, finding a strange comfort in the exhaustion. I even went on a date last week. A woman Tom set me up with, a nurse named Lisa with kind eyes and a quick laugh. It didn't work out, not yet, but it was a start, a step toward something new. I thought about Sarah sometimes, wondered if she was still with Brian, if she regretted what she'd done. But it didn't consume me anymore. I'd learned to live for myself, to find joy in small things. A good book on a quiet night, a cold beer after a long day, a clear sky stretching out above me. The camera was long gone, sold on eBay for half what I paid, a relic of a choice I'd made in desperation. It had given me the truth, but it couldn't give me peace. That was something I had to find on my own. And for the first time in a long time, sitting there with the breeze on my face and the world quiet around me, I felt free.